Hello and welcome to the 3-time award-winning Tough Girl podcast, which is all about motivating and inspiring you while increasing the amount of female role models in the media. I'm your host, Sarah Williams. If you love adventure, challenge, and hearing from women who share their stories and provide top tips and advice to help you take on your own personal challenges, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out. New episodes go live every Tuesday at 7 a.m. UK time, with bonus episodes happening on a Thursday. You can support the Tough Girl mission by signing up as a patron by visiting Patreon, patreon.com/Tough Girl Podcast. Keep listening until the very end as I share more information about what's going on with me, with Tough Girl challenges, give shout outs, and recommend other Tough Girl podcast episodes. More information can be found at toughgirlchallenges.com.
So I'm Pamela Lee. I'm Irish, but I live and sail and work in France, in Brittany, France, to be specific, which is on the northwest coast of France. And I am based here because I'm a professional offshore sailor. And France, particularly this part of France, is really kind of the mecca of offshore sailing. And it's not just offshore sailing that I do. I do quite a specific type of offshore sailing. It's shorthanded. So whereas a lot of offshore sailing, some people might be familiar with, is kind of in teams, often like about 15 or so people on a boat. What I do shorthanded sailing is most of the time we're racing with only one person, maybe two people, or sometimes three or four on a boat. So it's very minimal crew. And this part of France where I am, and France in general, is known for being the best of the best at that type of racing. And it's a fully professional sport here. So if I would pursue my career in this area, this is where I need to be. And that's why I'm here.
Do you speak French?
I do now.
Oh, très bien. I don't.
Right.
I know the basics, like bonjour, ça va? And comment t'appelles-tu?
No, well, see, sometimes I might accidentally put in like some weird French phrases like bah ouais, just things like that, like because it's so mixed for me now. And it's particularly when I'm sailing, I sail like 90% of the time in French. So even some of my like lingo on board is really French, and I actually find it hard to do it back in English. But I did do French in school. So I already had French school level, and had done French exchanges and stuff when I was there. So I would say I had a good school level of French, but then like I didn't use it for 10 years or so in between. So I definitely wasn't like, now I live and work in France in French, but that was not the case when I first got here. So that was one of the challenges that I've had to take on with my stride, I guess.
Anybody who learns like a second language, it's one of the most impressive things for me, because I'm just so bad at even like English pronunciation sometimes. I think it's just amazing, because I probably did about 10 years of French and can barely speak it. But yeah,
No, but it's really like the necessity. It's that whole thing of being just thrown in the deep end and not having an option. Absolutely, because I've learned, I speak more French now in the 3 years that I've been living in France than I ever did through 10 years of learning it in school. So it's really just about that immersion, and there's no other option. And it's certainly when it's part of something you're working towards as a bigger goal, it's just one of those things that you've just got to get on with. So I think it's really circumstantial rather than to do with anyone's particular talent for languages.
So when you were living in Ireland, were you living coastal area? Were you from a sailing family? Did you pick this up from quite a young age?
Yeah, so I think I was thinking about this the other day. I don't know why I was thinking about it, but I think I've lived beside the sea for my entire life, except for 1 year where I did my master's in London. So I've always been beside or near the sea. And I think I even get like a little disorientated if I don't know where the coast is, because I use it like as my kind of north, south, east, west navigator. So yeah, always by the sea, from Greystones in Wicklow in Ireland, which is on the east coast, south of Dublin, so kind of the southeast coast. But my dad is a sailing fanatic, but very much in the passion hobby sense of it. Like he, taught himself to sail as a kid, and he's still sailing today. He's doing the Frostbite series, which is the winter series, with a mate in the same type of boat, the same class of boat that he's been sailing almost his whole life, that he met my mum sailing and that kind of thing. So not at all on the professional offshore level like I do, but definitely that there's always been boats and sailing, and all of that has always been like part of our life and part of what we do. And when we are going on family holidays, it was always like in the camper van with a trailer of boats behind us to off to like a lake in the middle of Ireland, or to go camping or something along those lines.
So when you were growing up, and you're obviously surrounded by sailing, and obviously your dad's a fanatic and super passionate about it. Did you also realize, or were there opportunities to become a professional sailor at that point?
No, 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 like not at all. I definitely, I, I think like I definitely never. I think I had like a little dream in the back of my mind, and like, God, imagine what if, like, if I could choose one thing that I could do ever in my life, like people would be like, oh, I'd love to be an astronaut and go to the moon, or, that kind of thing. But you don't actually think it's ever gonna happen. So I guess I probably had like this inkling of like, wow, it would be, imagine. I'd seen kind of videos of the ocean race, which was this big race that goes around, and kind of like imagine that. Wow, that'd be cool. But I definitely never ever considered as a career option either professional sport, or for that matter, professional sailing, and for that matter, even more professional offshore sailing. So it was definitely growing up not at all something I considered. As I just didn't see it. I just didn't. There just wasn't. I couldn't have. I'd have to just have imagined a route to doing that. It just wasn't. I couldn't have. I couldn't have verbalized in any way the route that I've now had over the last few years, the last however many years. There's no way when I was young and growing up I could have verbalized or imagined how that could have come to be.
And when you look back, when was there a turning point? When was like the opportunity, which, I mean, I don't know if it was laid out sort of almost like this black and white, like you get given this like sailing opportunity, or you get another option, I don't know, to get a 9 to 5 job or something, or to study further. You mentioned doing your masters in London, etc. Was there a point where you had to choose the sailing?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely wasn't black and white, as you said, but I think it was kind of progressively over time, I guess. I think progressively over time, I probably adapted my mentality of how I wanted to, or believed I could live my life. I was never someone who was going to go well with a 9 to 5. Do you know what I mean? I always knew that for sure. And, I tried it once or twice, and it just didn't fit with my character and what I wanted to do. I've always been definitely kind of very creative, and I always would definitely want to do something a little bit different, or a little bit outside the box of the general stuff that was kind of laid out as your options when you're going to school. So there was always a little something of that there, you know. And then but it wasn't sailing or anything until I dabbled in a few experiences here and there when I got the opportunity to do some kind of youth offshore sailing stuff, where I did the Asgard, which was the tall ship training ship in Ireland, and got to kind of go a few nights at sea and do that. So I had these little tasters of offshore sailing. But really, it was when I was living in I ended up living in Sydney in Australia. I was actually working, in a communications job first, and then managing a gallery, so like a totally different route professionally, very on the creative side of things. But I really wanted to sail. I wanted to keep sailing, but I was in Sydney, and it's already like living life there is expensive enough and everything. And I just like I couldn't see any way that I could have my own boat or keep a boat and be sailing. But I also realized that there was this kind of offshore sailing thing. And just to be clear, like offshore sailing is when you're going like out to sea, usually for several days or nights, and you're doing like a long distance kind of marathon race at sea, rather than racing a little regatta inshore in small boats. I don't know if that clarifies the difference, because not everyone knows that straight away. But in Australia, they have a big race called the Sydney to Hobart race, which is from Sydney down to Tasmania, down to Hobart, Tasmania. every year, and it's a really big race. It's kind of one of those well-known world races. It's on a lot of people's bucket lists, and I saw that and I was like, Jesus, that would be really like, imagine that'd be cool. So I was like, okay, well, I'll go I'll go down to the local sailing club and I'll, walk around and kind of see if I can meet people and give them my sailing CV. Like I know how to sail, so maybe I'll get lucky. And I kind of did that, and I ended up getting on a team with a really cool boat and a really good team owned by two brothers as shepherds. And they kind of took me under their wing, and their attitude was kind of like, okay, well, if you're keen, you work hard, you show up, and you already know how to sail, so all we need to do is like teach you the big boat side of it and the offshore side of it. Then yeah, sure, you can come along. So I ended up doing like sailing with them for I think almost 3 years. So all my weekends were sailing with them. All my kind of long weekends, my other friends would be going off to do other stuff or parties, and I was, going offshore to do a race. And I did Sydney Hobart, that big race with them a few times, and it was really just like I just fell more and more and more in love with it. And then, yeah, there was then a point where I had been in Australia for a few years, and I kind of needed to decide whether to kind of try and chase the visa thing to stay there and continue doing that, or to do something else. And I realized I really wanted to travel. I really wanted to do something else. I wanted to do more sailing. And career-wise, I had the land job that I had. I had kind of felt like I'd reached like a bit of like a kind of ceiling with that. So it felt like a time I wanted to change. And I thought, well, maybe I can go and do this sailing thing kind of professionally. I'd started to hear of a few people doing it a different way. So I did the very kind of classic non-French thing, Anglo thing. And I got my yacht master qualification, and I went to Palma, Mallorca. And there I started working like freelance for sailing teams, for doing deliveries of boats, working on kind of super yacht sailing boats and that kind of stuff. So I started doing my kind of professional sailing thing at that point, and that I guess was like a big decision. And I did that for a few years, and then the next big thing was when I got the opportunity to come to France, and that really changed everything and really sent me down the more professional competitive route.
Where did that opportunity come from?
So I guess I had been like sailing professionally or doing it as my job for about 4 years, and kind of between the Caribbean, I was doing Caribbean and Med seasons, kind of very freelancy on this kind of you know doing some racing, but also deliveries of boats backward and forth and stuff. And there was one owner I'd worked for a good few years. So I did a lot of racing with him, but I was getting to the point where I just found that like a, basically nearly every time I was racing, there'd be a team of like 15 people on a boat for, let's say, and nearly every time I'd be, if not the only girl, one of maybe two girls on the boat. So it was always kind of just the only girl. And because there's like 15 people on the boat, everyone has a very specific job to do on the boat. Like, like a hockey team or a rugby team, you have your position on the boat, and that's what you do, and that's kind of your job. And I was kind of finding that I was kind of always in the same positions and always had the same job. And although it was really cool and really fun, I was getting I really wanted to do more. I wanted to be driving. I wanted to be navigating. I wanted to be doing the tactics. I wanted to learn more about trimming the sails. But if I was never getting to do those positions, then, how was I going to learn them? So then how was I going to get better? So then how was I going to do the positions? So it's kind of like this bit of the circle. And I felt like I was hitting my head a bit off a glass ceiling at that point. I couldn't really see how to break up to the next level, for my own ambition, but also just as a sailor. And so I decided to stop that, and kind of I didn't really know what I was going to do, but like look for the next opportunity or what I could do or anything. And I was back in Ireland for a little while, trying to figure out the next phase. And there was talk at the time, they were talking about the Olympics for Paris 2024, which we just had. They were bringing in a few new classes into the Olympics, and there was discussion around this. And one of the potential classes for the Olympics was to be a double-handed offshore racing. So double-handed being two people on board offshore, a race several days long going out to sea. And it had to be mixed, so a girl and a guy. So it had to be a mixed sex duo. So it had to be a girl and a guy from each country. So because of that, I got invited to train as a potential team to try and qualify to be the Irish team for this hypothetical potential event in Paris 2024. And to do that, we went to France to train because France is the best place to do this type of racing. So that brought me to France and kind of opened up the French sailing offshore world to me, which I hadn't experienced before at all. I didn't really know it existed or how it worked or anything. And then subsequently, they didn't go forward with that class for the Olympics. They actually did kite surfing instead. So even though it didn't go forward, it was like the opportunity that brought me to France. And then when that kind of project ended because it wasn't, the Olympics wasn't going ahead, I was like, well, I'm staying in France and continuing on this route anyway because this is amazing and this is where I want to be. So that kind of was another big step into to putting me, I guess, opening my eyes or opening a door into the possibilities or seeing a possible route forward as a competitive sailor professionally, I guess.
What year was that?
2019, good between 2019 and 2020.
Awesome, because I know in 2020 you set three world records by sailing around
Yeah.
Ireland, which is massive congratulations, absolutely incredible. But talk us through that goal, that challenge, how it came about, how did that happen?
Yeah, I mean, it happened very quickly. So, yeah, really proud. I did it with a friend, Kat. So we set three records in one go. We set the outright record for fastest sailing around Ireland in a boat of 40 feet or under. So in a boat of the smallest category of boat, kind of. But at the same time, we set a record for double-handed because previous records had been set by, fully crewed teams. So it's quite a different thing when you're sailing with only two of you as opposed to 14 or so. And then also female record. So that was really cool. We got all three. But yeah, that came about because I had, as I said, I had started, it was a tricky time because we were just still kind of in the COVID phase then. So everything was a bit strange. So I was kind of going a little bit back and forth between France and Ireland as and when we could, but travel was really tricky because of COVID. And again, it was it was a result of the same sort of thing where I felt like frustrated by I had opportunity to do things, but I felt kind of frustrated in that, like, I felt like somewhat blocked as well, like that I was getting a taste of this sailing, but I wasn't still really getting the opportunity to prove myself, and to test myself and to get a chance to, be the skipper, be the navigator, and really take the decision. I was still kind of always kind of getting a back seat, if that makes sense, in the racing and in the teams that I was part of. And it was just, again, frustrating. And it was almost a result of me, like, kind of questioning myself, like, well, okay, well, maybe I'm not good enough, or maybe I can't do it. But then I'm like, but I think I can. But how can I know if I never get the chance to try or to push it? And I guess it's like the kind of a combination of like a personal inner ambition being sporty, competitive, and just kind of wanting to know whether you can do something or prove something else. And a little bit of that outward ambition where you're kind of like, well, if they're not giving me a chance, then obviously they don't think that I can do it. So, well, I need to show them, a little, and I say this now reflecting, I don't think I was quite that clear for me at the time in my head. So I was trying to think of something that I could do. But it is tricky because with sailing, it's a mechanical sport. So we have the boats that we need to use and stuff like that. So it's not, there still needs to be a certain amount of money and funding behind things because you need access to a boat. You need the time to sail. There's sails. There's lots of parts to it. So it's not just, you know, you and running with your feet and your runners or you and your shoe. There's all these other aspects of it that kind of you have to get in line as well before you can do something. So that was kind of one of the main issues was getting a boat to do something. So a good friend here in France, Marcus Hutchinson, who's Irish, but he's been working out here for a long time. I was staying with him at the time and we were chatting and I was kind of saying, I want to do something. I don't know what to, having that chat. And he was like, well, why don't you, I don't know, go bring a boat back to Ireland and go set the Round Ireland record or something. I was like, how? I don't have a boat, like. He was like, he actually had three racing boats in this class that we're racing in, and he charters them out to people. So, it's a business for him. And he said, look, at the end of this season, when the racing's done, you can take one of the boats. You can bring it back to Ireland, do your thing as long as I'll give it to you rent free, as long as you take care of it, you pay for any damage, and you bring it back to me afterwards, before the end of November. So I was like, okay. And this was like in September or, September, October or something that we had that. So I kind of had like a month and a half really to get the boat, learn to sail the boat, find someone to do this weird adventure with me. My friend Kat, luckily, get the boat to Ireland. So sail the boat from France to Ireland, and then get kind of everything organized, try and fit in some training, and wait for a weather window that would hopefully show up for us to try and go around Ireland, both safely but as fast as possible. And then after that, get the boat back to France before, because it was starting to be November, so you're looking at winter, with the Irish Sea and traveling back. So you really don't want to leave it too late also to be sailing back between France and Ireland or around Ireland. So it's kind of this really rushed project. But we had a lot of people who really helped us out, and including a Arusha and stuff like that. And it was one of those things where everything could have gone wrong, except that everything kind of went right. And we did a really good time. And I think no one was really paying attention at the start until we actually started. They were like, oh, actually, they're going really fast.
What is a good time? Like what? Like I literally can't even put. Is it like
yeah,
12 hours? Is it 20 hours? Like 4 days a week? I don't know.
I'm trying to now see if I have to double check the record time, but I think we did it in 3 days and 19 hours and 24 seconds or something like that. And the previous record had been something like almost 5 days. So we're talking still about like several days at sea, but we did manage to cut off quite a big time from the previous record. So we did get a really good time. So we tried quite hard to beat it. But yeah, we're talking like, between 3 and 4 days at sea to go around. So around Ireland is 700 nautical miles. So 700 to 800 nautical miles. Yeah. So it's definitely, and we're in a 40-foot boat, a little bit smaller. So it's not a super big boat, but it is a racing boat. So yeah, you're talking a few days at sea.
Yeah. And no sleep, just like
Very
powering on
minimal,
through.
very minimal sleep.
And is this what sort of launched you, I suppose, in a way, in terms of getting your name out there as like a sailor, as someone who can do hard things, challenging things, can break records, who needs to be given like more opportunities?
Yeah, and partly it definitely helped because the sailing thing, it's kind of strange. There's no direct pathway to how but you can only get better through experience. You can obviously study weather and tide and study strategy, and you can do your homework. But really, the best sailors are kind of the most often, it's a combination always, but
Yeah.
the best sailors are often the most experienced sailors. It definitely comes part with parcel. So you really need to get on the water and, yeah, prove yourself. And the way that you kind of progress is by sailing and proving yourself. But if you're not getting the opportunity to sail, how can you prove yourself? And that kind of cycle. So this was for me a little bit like that. Like it was my chance to kind of prove to myself and, yeah, put my name, I guess, on the map a little bit, at least so that you have then something to bounce off potentially, when other sailors kind of might recognize your name or look back on your kind of CV of experience to see what you've done, before they give you your chance, kind of like a CV in any sense. But also in terms of a lot of, as I was talking about, like the funding side of it, like in France, it's a professional sport, so it runs off sponsorship and sponsorship deals, kind of like, the Tour de France and those sort of things. It's all sponsorship deals. So also in terms of that, doing something like a world record and kind of making a big media splash out of the success of that and getting your name out there also gives you something to talk about in terms of building a project in terms of sponsorship. So you're kind of building up all these different strings, your actual sailing experience, your contacts in the industry so that people to get opportunities, but also like your leverage media wise or sponsorship wise as someone legitimate potentially, when you try to build projects later on. So there's kind of those different strands of it, and there's no real black and white way to progress. You've kind of just got to build it up and when you get an opportunity to do something, do it the very, very, very best you can so that you get the next opportunity.
And to be fair, like a lot of it is also it is based on like social media and influence. And, can you get in the mainstream press? Like, are women's stories worthy? Obviously they are worthy, but if you've got an all male newsroom, etc., it can be very difficult to get women's voices heard and out there. So it's definitely a catch-22. What's the next big challenge? What are you training for at the moment?
Yeah, so I totally agree what you were saying just there about the, that whole question about women's voices and women in sport. And I can even say, like, I honestly think from 2020 when I first did that to now, we've seen such huge progress around women's sports and women's voices and how they're represented and respected more and more and more. So much work to be done, but it's really cool and it's really exciting to be kind of a part of that push towards progress as well. So doing projects like the Round Ireland record, and I had another project in 2023, which was an all-female team as well. And I'm part of another all-female team that we're going to do try to set around the world record called the Famous Project and those sorts of things. So it's a really strong part of what I do, although I'm also sailing on mixed teams and stuff like that. I do love to use projects when you can to also kind of contribute to that progress forward. That's a really cool part of it. And that comes to, yeah, my current project. I'm working towards the Route du Rhum in 2026. And the Route du Rhum is once every 4 years, a transatlantic race from Saint-Malo in northwest France to the Caribbean, so across the Atlantic, solo. So just me, just one person on the boat. And it's the longest running and known as the toughest solo transatlantic race in the world, and just every 4 years. And at the last Route du Rhum, I was there working for a skipper who was taking the start, and there was only less than 5% of the skippers there were women. So I think there's, like 135 skippers or even more, and only 7 of them were women. So it's a really small representation, even though in offshore sailing, it's very, very unique. There's actually no women's or men's category in the racing. Once we take the start line, like there's just sailors. There's no women's category or men's category. You're either first, second, third, fourth, whatever. It's nothing to do with whether you're a guy or girl or anything like that. And that's a really cool thing about the sport as well, because it's very unique, but everyone is just like the sea doesn't care whether you're a guy or a girl. You're all just there racing. And I really love that aspect of it, but it still is hugely male dominated. There's more and more females coming through. But I really set that goal as something for myself. I really wanted to be on the start line with my own project, doing the race in 2026. So that's what we're working at the moment. And when I do that, I'll also be the first Irish female to have ever done the race. So that's another cool thing. But in doing it, it's quite a long project. It's so to be up to standard, to race competitively in a solo transatlantic race. I mean, you have to, you can't just show up and be there on the start day. You have to qualify firstly, and that's miles racing. So it's done on a miles qualification, how many miles you've done racing previously. But also you have to, you have to race and train before. You have to get to know your boat. You have to get up to speed. You have to get up to level. There's a lot to be done. So the project starts now. We've just secured our founding sponsor for the project, who is, I can tell you, it's DFDS, a huge shipping and freight company, and they were one of my sponsors previously. So they're coming along and they've upped the level and they're in as founding sponsor. They've signed up for 2 years to get us to the Route du Rhum, with large portion of the starting budget. We still need to find the rest of the budget, and it's a 2 year program where this year I sail and race double-handed mostly. So I have a co-skipper, someone with me. So it's a really good year to train and to learn the boat and learn with another sailor. And at the end of this year, we do the Transat Jacques Vabre, which is a double-handed transatlantic race. So another huge race. It's on every 2 years. But because it's double-handed, it gives you a really good opportunity to do a similar format race, but with someone else on board. So you're kind of learning from each other. And then next year in 2026, I go into solo mode where I'll be racing almost exclusively on my own in the qualification races up to the transatlantic, the San Malo, the Route du Rhum at the end of 2026. So I hope I'm explaining that in a way that is
You are.
somewhat understandable.
it
Really
it makes
for
sense.
non-sailors.
Just so I can because I hike a lot, and I know hiking is very cheap. I know like exactly how much it'll cost me roughly per day, depending on which country I'm in, because I've tracked it over the years. How much money do you need for a 2-year project like this? And will you be able to get all of that funding through sponsorship, or would you need to self-fund as well?
Well, how long is a piece of string
Yeah.
is one
Well,
of
actually,
those
sorry,
things.
are there limits on like is there a maximum amount, or is it just like unlimited?
Oh no, yeah, there's no limit. Like the more you have, the better. Okay, so like sailing is interesting because it's kind of a weird combination between like the exploration side of like mountaineering or something like that, where you're really going out in the elements and there's like really human perseverance, dealing with nature out on your own side of it. But on the other hand, it's also a mechanical sport. And with the mechanical side of it, it kind of sometimes feels like it sits more in the realm of like Formula One racing or rally car racing. So you're hugely dependent on the human and the human endurance and their ability to deal with being at sea for 20 days on your own. But also you have this machine that you're, manipulating or trying to use to get yourself across the ocean as well. But the machine is a racing machine and machines cost money for upkeep and maintenance and all that kind of stuff. So depending on how big or small your budget is, that's gonna put parameters on how potentially how well prepared you as a sailor and the skipper, in terms of like what you can put into training and all of that, but also your machine, how well prepared your machine is, because if you're going to have to cut corners on price, then that ultimately is going to affect your machine. And there's things like the top budget guys, might be building a new boat and they'd have, several people on the technical team helping prepare the boat to the utmost and then having new sails and that kind of stuff. And then you could go all the way back down to the bottom who, have just about got enough money to ensure that they can keep the boat together. They're using old sails. And so there's kind of every side of it. So I'm really looking for what we really want to do is a performance project. So I want to we're building a project that can compete. So to compete, there's, a certain level of a certain standard that you need to meet in terms of me as a sailor and the training and support, training that I can put in, but that kind of goes down to the support that I have and having a team around me, but also on the boat itself and the time and money we can put into the boat being as good as possible. So for me, like the dream budget per year, annual budget would be about 500K per year, and that would cover everything from purchasing or chartering the boat to new sales to having a full-time boat captain who would work on the technical side to me, to having people to support on the comms, to having management, to having a physical coach, just top outright. And then we work downwards from there to what we can do with what we get, if that makes sense. But there is a minimum baseline there. We have to have enough money to pay for the boat. We're going to charter a boat. So, but we have to have enough money to charter the boat. We have to have enough money for running costs, to pay the insurance of the boat, to pay the docking of the boat, to pay the entry fees for the races, to pay to eat. Eating is good. And that basic. So we have kind of like a basic budget, basic operating budget. And then as we build up from there, it can be like, okay, well, we can afford to get a new sail, or we can afford to do this thing or do this upgrade or that kind of thing. Does that make sense?
It does, and this is so fascinating because I like how you explained it's like that combination between F1, like is it the money in terms of having
Yeah,
all of that support around you, allowing you to be the best of the job, or when
exactly.
you're scraping the basics, it's like, well, you might have to, if you're cutting corners, then
Yeah, and
you
then
don't
it
have,
comes down
yeah.
to the machine side of it as well, but also, if you're, you know, the skippers, we're professional athletes as well. So if
Mm.
you're so tight on budget that you're spending hours and hours working on the boat unsupported, trying to get something to work and not having the right team around you so that you're doing everything, and so not getting enough rest and sleep before you go out to race for 20 days, it's going to affect your ability to perform. And, then anywhere in between those two things, some guys with not much budget still do amazing, but here and there, the really top guys, they do have budget to run it's a professional racing project, and it's really cool. Like in France, it really works. It really is professional. It's all run through sponsorship, and it's a mutual thing. Like the sponsors understand what they get from it. They get a huge amount of branding. Well, there's all the basic things like, you have the boats, like Formula One cars, like branded up to the nines, looking super cool, team gear, all branded. So, the obvious kind of branding stuff. And then, of course, you're going to get like the images and the media and all of that kind of stuff, as well as, now we have Starlink and amazing internet, so we can be doing live feeds from the middle of the ocean. So the endless content possibilities nowadays, which is almost, an obligation. Well, it is an obligation. It's
Yeah.
part of the job. But then also on another side of it, like what we do with sponsors is we really try to build projects with each project kind of has, whatever they're doing, but build projects with messaging. And like as I said, for me, obviously the whole about using position as being a woman in sport and a female professional in sport, and using your position there to create positive change, to create act as a role model, to be part of all that conversation is obviously a huge aspect. And we work very closely with sponsors who have that ambition and that drive as well. So that we're, all aligned on the same messaging, and it's really genuine. So then there's a lot of things that we do with sponsors as well, which is that you don't see, that's kind of behind the scenes. You have all the branding and all that stuff. But we do like a lot of what do we call them? We call them our public relations events. So with certain sponsors, depending how much they put in or not, we'll do special events with them and the boat, So for instance, DFDS, who's our big sponsor, they've just got the new ferry route from St. Malo to Jersey. So we're planning like a really cool project with them where I'll bring the boat up and we'll have the boat there. Hopefully we'll meet some of their guests, their employees, they're really big about driving an increase for women in increase in women for taking careers in the maritime industry, and really opening that up. So going there to meet with them and some of their cadets, and having a sailing experience, collaborating over, doing really interactive activations and engaging like deeply with the sponsors and that kind of stuff is a huge part of what we do as well. And that also comes into, having the budget, the means, and the time to do all of that around all the racing and everything. So it's really like a very multi-layered,
Yeah.
a multi-layered thing. But
Thank you for explaining all of that, because I think sometimes people see the end result. They see the boat with, all the sponsorship on, or, someone's outfit with all the labels and the sponsorship things. But actually, I think it's maybe just me. Like, I think sponsorship can be really stressful. Even trying to get sponsorship, and then once you have got a sponsorship, it's maintaining that relationship. And it's like, it's either, well, I've got to pitch them again in 6 months, or I've got to pitch them in a year. But I'm really glad that you got like a 2 year, because that's almost like a breathing window. Like, it's a good length of time to enable you to do what you need to do. But I think it's important that people do talk about this, because sometimes, like, I mean, it's very different. Like, if I want a tent, for example, what I have to do in return for like a £700 or an £800 tent, sometimes I'm like, oh, is it just easier for me to save the money up and then just have the tent, and then not feel obligated to do the rest of, the stuff that comes with, because, nothing is for free. So you do have to deal with that. You're doing I can't remember, Change Opportunity, Evening with the Kill, Meet the Women. Is that a TV show you're doing? Is that
the Evening the Keel. So yeah, well, no, I've been involved in a number of kind of that was a documentary. It was actually really cool to check it out. A documentary run by Musto, which Musto clothing, which is a specific sailing brand, and I'm an ambassador for them. So they are, I guess, a sponsor of me, but a sponsor in kind. So I have an ambassador agreement with them. So that it's really amazing, because that really helps me out, because like the very specific sailing gear, like that I need to go offshore. Like, of course, if I just had to buy that, it's really, really expensive. But and you need the top range stuff, because, well, that's, again, I'll go back to the Formula One thing. Like, they have to have their special car fire suits, and we have to have our special, like, middle of the ocean suits. Uh, and so Musto is a partner of mine, ambassador. So I work with them. So I'll do ambassador events and stuff with them, as well as, photo shoots and that kind of stuff. And then I have their gear exclusively on board, but also they work really well with their athletes, and they did a documentary of featuring some of the women in offshore sailing. So some of us, and they followed a few of our stories and produced a series on it last year, which was really nice. So that's the Evening the Keel series. I think is linked on my YouTube. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say you can watch it on YouTube as well. So I'll definitely
Yeah.
share those links as well, because I think that's awesome, because I think it's just the visibility, it's the representation, like more women seeing women doing challenges. And also with your sailing around Ireland, it's almost like the fastest known time in running. It's like once one woman's got it and one other woman's seen that she's got it, it's like you want to encourage more women to go after it. It's like to be like,
Oh,
okay,
absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
go break the records. Like, yeah, just go, or to be honest, just go out and set the records. Like, do the first woman, be the first Irish woman, be the first woman from your country, from your neck of the woods. And even if you're not the first woman, be the second, be the third. Like
Yes.
keep passing it on. Absolutely.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's really important to me, and it means a lot to me. Like, I really do try to, when I have a project, like a lot of the time I don't have a project and I'm working on other people's projects or sailing, because I also sail for other people, like as a kind of professional sailor on other teams and stuff like that. So when I don't have my own project, I sail with others, and then there's not so much I can do because I'm not really controlling it. But when I have my own project, such as this project that we're launching now, which I'm so excited about. And I had my own project in 2023 for the Transat Jacques Vabre prior, and also with the Round Ireland thing. Like, it's super important to me when I'm in that position to try and, I guess, like, look back over your shoulder or look around and see where there's other, I mean, we say women and girls, but really anyone, but generally women and girls who are, trying to get experience and working hard and kind of coming up the ladder. And if I can turn around and, give them some miles in the boat, give them some experience, involve them in the project or anything like that, like, I know that that's when people gave me that opportunity coming through it, like, that's how you move forward. So it's a huge part of what I do, and a lot of like why, I am, yeah, you're on Instagram and stuff like that. Like, it's part of the game with the sponsoring, but also because I really believe that if you're talking about it and what you're doing, then hopefully it drops a little something to someone somewhere. And even if it's, not sailing that they want to do, they just want to, I don't know, or open their own knitting shop, then if you just see others, and that's one of the really positive things about social media. There's plenty of non-positive things about social media and troubles we have, but I think it's really, really, really one of the great things, because even I'm inspired. Like, I thought the Olympics was amazing, and I had never seen so many amazing sporting women. And I was like, I don't know if it's just my algorithm, but I kind of forgot there was even any men in the Olympics. Like, all
I
I'm
think
seeing is these
we've got the same
badass
algorithm.
chicks. Like, yeah,
But all my content is women doing epic adventures and
yeah,
challenges, or like living like an alternative lifestyle. So whether it's choosing not to get married, not to have kids, to embrace
yeah.
like van life, or to go and do a ski season, or to to go sailing around the Caribbean or the Med, or move to Australia and just literally live life on their terms. And I do curate it that way, because I just find it so.
Yeah, and I do think as well, like, it doesn't even have to be, we're talking about amazing things for these people, but even something as simple as, I have, a friend at home. I wonder if she'll know it, but she's gone working, a same job for a long time. She's got three kids, and just recently she's gone, well, I'm not going to do that job anymore. I'm going to stop, and I'm going to set up my own business doing no, 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 no. And that's a huge step for her. It's a huge brave step for her to do that, and to have the inspiration, the belief in herself, and all of that, to kind of, take the risk, go against the grain, and start out her own thing. Even if you match it against, I don't know, sailing across the Atlantic, it's very, very different, but it's still having the belief that you can do do what you want if you want to. You don't
But
have to.
it's a personal challenge. I think that's what one of the things that I want to definitely get across with the podcast is that just there's no comparisons. Like, don't compare yourself to
No,
somebody else,
exactly.
but be
Yeah.
inspired by them and think, okay, Well, what I'm hearing is, especially from you, having these dreams, having these projects, and like taking the opportunities and pushing forward and actually going out, figuring out the sponsorship, getting the sponsorship in place, and just keep moving forward. Like, that's what you've got to do. And that's the same whether you're starting your own business, you're taking the next steps in your adventure challenge journey, like signing up for a marathon or a triathlon. As long as it excites you and motivates you and that's what you want to do, then that's what it comes down to, really.
Yeah, and I definitely think like if and when you can, if you have community around that and being able to see others do it, like it makes a huge difference because you less like, is it just me? Am I crazy to be doing this? Or because you have that supportive community, whether it's online or whether it's, have you met or your family or some friends or whatever. And I think that can really, really, really help. And I've been really lucky that I have that through my family and stuff like that. They're pretty supportive of what I do and they get it. But I know that that's not like that for everyone. So finding that community elsewhere, if it is just an Instagram page that you follow or something, I think that can still have a really good impact.
Oh, absolutely. And Pam, where are you most active on social media? How can people connect with you, find out more information about your offshore sailing, about your world record and your next big challenge in 2026? Where should they go?
Yep. So Instagram is a really good one. I try to be I try to be active on it, but it takes a lot of time now. So I'm always there on Instagram, and there'll be more and more as the project ramps up, and I've got more and more to talk about. So definitely there. It's Pammy Be Free on Instagram. There's also my website with background information, which is pamelaleesailing.com. And on there's links to my LinkedIn and the YouTube, which the videos that we talked about and that kind of stuff. So yeah, I'd say that. And I would also say like anyone never hesitate to shoot a message or a PM or anything like that as well.
Awesome. Pam, I'd love for you to have the final words of advice, final words of wisdom for other women out there who want to take on their own personal challenge. They want to step outside their comfort zone. They want to go after their own project, doing it for them. Apart from just do it, what advice and tips would you like to share? And you can take that in any direction you would like.
Oh, well, I'm sure I could think of endless things. Like I really encourage, like sometimes goals can seem, if you have a dream or a goal that's really, really big and seems really, really far away, and you just feel like a little lost, like how can I ever get there? And you don't see the steps. I think it can be really helpful. And I've worked with this I work with a coach, Lisa Carroll. She's been working with for a few years. We've worked a lot on this. What am I going to say here? And it's about like you have your big goal there that you really want to achieve, and it can seem like so far away and almost so unattainable that you might give up or not know how to start. And I think it can really help to just like sit down with a piece of paper, some color pens, something like that, and jot that down. But then all the different steps along the way, break it down into smaller steps and smaller goals, and kind of try to build a little step-by-step progression plan towards getting closer and closer to that big goal, whether it's a marathon or a new business or, I don't know, knitting a jumper. I don't know why I'm referencing knitting so much. Or anything like that. But for me, I really find that when something seems like so big and scary, or that I've bitten off more than I can chew, or that kind of thing, like sitting down, jotting it all out and breaking it down into maintainable steps, because then when you do achieve the smaller steps, you get that kind of that sense of achievement in yourself, and that gives you like a little confidence boost because you've achieved something. So you're like, oh, I can do that one step, and you're one step closer to the big goal, and then you do the next one, and so you're giving yourself like a little confidence boost and little bit of a verification that you can do it along the way, and then it's going to get you closer and closer to that big goal, even if that big goal along the way shifts slightly this way or shifts slightly that way. But I think that process is really helpful, and I think it's really useful to give yourself credit for the little things that you do along your path, because we all look at the big goal, like doing the marathon, whatever, but we forget about all that shit, all those things that we had to do to get there. And I think by acknowledging them at the start and then being able to look back on them and acknowledging them afterwards, you can really give yourself credit and give yourself the belief that you can tackle big things.
Absolutely. You can tackle big things, and you are proving that, Pam. Amazing to speak to you. Thank you so much for coming on the Tough Girl podcast to share more about your journey and your passion, and just best of luck with the Route du Rhum challenge in 2026. I'm so excited to follow along with your journey. It's going to be epic.
Thank you.
Hey, tribe. How are you all doing? Hope you're all keeping super well. Big shout out to all the sailors who are listening to this podcast episode and all the women who want to get into sailing but maybe just haven't had the opportunity yet. I hope this episode has inspired you. As always, everything that we have talked about today will be available in the show notes at toughgirlchallenges.com. If you're brand new to the podcast and you maybe just picked up this episode randomly, you might not know who I am. So I'm Sarah Williams. I'm the host of the Tough Girl podcast and the founder of Tough Girl Challenges, which is all about motivating and inspiring you while increasing the amount of female role models in the media, especially in relation to adventure and physical challenges. If you go visit toughgirlchallenges.com, you can find out more information about me, the different adventures and challenges that I've done. You can find out more about the incredible women that I've been speaking with on the Tough Girl podcast since 2025. And I do have a dedicated resources page specifically dedicated to sailors. And we have spoken to a wide range of women who've done a variety of different sailing challenges. So we spoke to Susan Smiley. She's a former Guardian editor and writer. She's a now author and sailor. She left her job to sail around Great Britain, but she ended up turning left at Land's End and ended up in Greece. Wonderful story. Highly recommend. Melissa Harlow. She's embracing life's adventures at 62, from sailing the Pacific Ocean to hiking the John Muir Trail. And Katrina Meggitt. She shares her battle with self-doubt and self-worth. She shares more about walking the Te Aroha Trail in New Zealand and sailing around Great Britain with her partner on a 28-foot boat. But we've also spoken to women who have quit their jobs and done, like Della Parsons. She quit her job to sail around the world with the Clipper Yacht Race. We've spoken to Catherine Knight, who's a qualified yacht master, ocean offshore racer, and has won international speed sailing competitions, as well as the women's European title in her Moth. Ellen Half Davis, she's an ocean rower and sailor. We've also spoken with Emily Penn. She's a skipper, ocean advocate and artist dedicated to studying environmental challenges in the most remote parts of the planet. We've spoken to Hannah Stodel, who's a 4-time Paralympian sailing, a triple world champion, who was, because this was quite a few years ago now, aspiring to compete in the Vendée Globe 2020. Pip Hare, professional ocean racing sailor who was part of the all-female team who won the Three Peaks Yacht Race in 2016. Whole host of women doing a whole variety of different sailing challenges. Well worth listening to these episodes, particularly if you're passionate about sailing, or even if you're not passionate about sailing, you're just wanting to learn more about women who do different challenges, take themselves out of their comfort zone to try new things, to experience new things. Well worth listening to them. And what I always think is you can pick and choose the advice and tips that they share. So it might not necessarily, the advice and tips, even though they might be related to say, or it's in the context of sailing, for example, you can still apply the advice and tips to your passions, your adventures and challenges. And sometimes it's quite good to go quite broad and just listen to episodes that you normally wouldn't listen to. So if you're, if you are into sailing, you probably never listen to the mountaineering episodes, or you might think, well, I'm never going to be a thru hike, or actually swimming isn't my thing. You can still learn a lot from other women's experiences. So what I encourage you to do is have a random Tuesday or Thursday where you just select an episode which you think, this isn't normally my cup of tea. I wouldn't normally go for this, but let's listen to it. Let's see what I can learn from these incredible women sharing their stories. Because I honestly do believe that you can learn one thing from every woman on the Tough Girl podcast, and that's over 750 pieces of advice. How amazing is that? But like I always do say, do not compare yourself to other women. Do not compare yourself to what other people are doing. Comparison is the thief of joy. It adds no value. So focus on yourself, focus on your goals, your ambitions, your dreams, what you want to achieve. The only person you compare yourself to is who you were a couple of years ago. That's the only time you look back. Look back, where was I a couple of years ago? Where are you now? Where are you going to be in the future? What plan are you going to put in place? What goals are you going to set up? What are the daily habits that you are going to be doing every single day to get you closer towards your dream, closer towards your goal? Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I'd love for you to leave a review. I'd love for you to tell one friend about the Tough Girl podcast. That's how we get these stories out there. The power of your voice. If you want to share it on social media, I would love you for that. You can tag me in it at Tough Girl Challenges. I'm probably most active on Instagram. I'm on Facebook, and we obviously have the Tough Girl Tribe as well, which is really cool, which is a closed Facebook community for the patrons and the guests of the Tough Girl podcast. You can sign up as a patron by visiting Patreon, patreon.com/Tough Girl podcast. All that's left for me to say is, wherever you are, whatever you are doing, give it your all. Give it 110%. Get after it. Go for it. Believe in yourself. And I believe in you. Take care. Lots of love, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.